Here's an interesting point of discussion we had with the Islam. He was trying to infer that without movement you can't have time, and someone else is trying to say that without time you can't have movement.
Yeah, I've heard that discussion before, but hang on, make sure. Okay, there we go. Now we're on Discord. Okay, so we're live now. I think Scottish governor trying to get in here. Does he got roles? Oh, he has to have that role. Now I'll bring him down in here. So, there we go. Hey, there we go. Hey, Jeff, you there? I gave you roles. All right. Well, anyways, it's late at night. I'm not gonna be on very long. I was just up, and I'm on a diet right now, so I'm a little hungry, and I couldn't eat because I already met my caloric intake for the day, and I was like, shit, I just need something to help me pass the time so I can fall asleep, so I can wake up tomorrow morning and actually eat some more, because I'm on counting calories, right? So I'm on a very strict thing to hopefully lose 5 pounds before next month. I think I can do it. I've done it before. We'll see. I'm doing about 1,500 to 1,800 calories a day. My metabolic base rate is about 1,800. My total for sedentary lifestyle, which I put it down, is about 2,150, give or take. So if I could just cut down maybe 500 calories a day, give or take, it'll be maybe 500 to 700 calories a day. That will give me at least 5 pounds by the end of the month, if the math works out. But I have it on a spreadsheet, but you guys don't care about that. Steve's fat. No, I've lost weight, and I got down to a 36. I was up to like a 40, maybe. No, I don't think it was a 42, but I hit a 40. Then I got down to 38. Then I'm about down to a 36. But I want to get down to a 34. I have a couple pairs of pants that are brand new that are 34s, and I want to be able to fit in them. So we'll see. But anyways, how you guys doing tonight? We are on the Great Debate Community channel. We are live from Discord. Got a couple people in here already. If you want to come in, the link is in the video description. That should be a link that does not expire. So in perpetuity, if you want to come in after the fact, you can go to that link and join up. I just have to give you roles. So, but Jeff, you there? You finally figured it out? I guess not. Oh, well. So as you guys may know, I'm doing a discussion on March 17th in LA live with my son Tjump. Yeah, he's adopted, by the way. Mom never really a big fan of his either, by the way. But I am going down there, and I don't know if I'm going to spend the night down there or not. I've thought about it. I've given it some considerable consideration, and I'm not sure. Either I'll come back that night, but if I'm having fun, or I'll know before, then I might just get a hotel and stay down there and come back the next day. The problem is the return trip from LA, really the best way to do it is at night, like after 4 o'clock. If not, I gotta take the bus. But the train is a hell of a lot faster, about the same price, and it cuts down my time by about half. So it's a huge, significant time saver to take the Express Metrolink. But that doesn't start running from LA until about 4 o'clock or so from the Union Station. I had that happened last time, and it took me about a 6-hour layover, which really sucked. So I don't know what I'm going to be doing. We'll see. Well, if anybody wants to join us down there, maybe they can convince me, and maybe we can get a room together. We can party. I have no idea. Whatever you guys want to do, but I will be in LA. It'll be just about, I think, looking at the map, I'd say about 3 miles south east of Skid Row, if you know where that's at. So it's in that area. So if you live around that area or want to come join, by all means, it'll be the discussion before the Vosh and Destiny discussion. I have no idea what the heck they're talking about, by the way. I just don't know. And I don't really care. I'm not a big fan of really either one of them. Vosh is just, I don't know. I don't understand him at all. And Destiny just likes to debate. And I don't even want to debate Tjump. I just wanted to talk to him. So I wanted to talk to him about some of his epistemology stuff. So I've been making notes, and I've got about 3 or 4 pages of notes, and it's kind of like a skeleton because I haven't answered any of these questions that I tend to pose to him and talk about. So I've already got a few things even laid out, and I wanted to have you guys maybe try to I don't know, act as Tjump and maybe be my debate partner or discussion partner to prep for this, because I know Tjump doesn't prep for anything. He won't even watch this. Even if he did, it wouldn't even matter. He's not going to glean much from it. But he doesn't do any prep work. And I don't like to go on things blind, right? I like to kind of at least have an idea of what I'm going to do. If not, then what's really the point? I mean, I'm not really concerned about the discussion. I mean, if there's something I don't know about, I just tell people I have no idea. I'm not afraid to admit that I don't know something, which is a lot of stuff that I don't know. So I'm just there to have a discussion about Tjump, about some of the things that he has said, and try to get some clarification. And so one of the things that he talks about is, again, we're going back to the his stipulative usage of the word atheist. Go figure, right? I mean, I know it always goes back to those silly, stupid definitions too, which, again, anybody who tells you that I have arguments on definitions, you need to have them clarified, because these are not definitional arguments. I don't give a shit what definitions people use. I want to argue about the baggage that goes along with it. I want to argue, okay, if you use this definition, let's see what happens. But nobody ever does that with me. Nobody. They just like, oh, Steve's arguing definitions. He's idiot, whatever. But very few people go, okay, well, if we do this, then what happens? Well, let's discuss that, right? So Tjump has a very unique position. He thinks that somebody says, do Tjump talk? That's easy. Talk fast, be smug. Say everything you say is irrelevant. That's good. That's good. But here's the thing, Curl. Let's assume that Tjump's, well, okay, he's going to use some invectives. I can't assume otherwise because it's almost a necessity. But for this discussion, I already know his rhetoric, right? I have 2 pages of things that he says already, all the way from, you have your head up your ass and all that. I've already got that. That's not what I care about. I'm going to be very cordial to him, but I wanted to say from his positions what things happen, right? Where things go, because this is like what I want people to do to me. If people want to step up and they say, "Hey, Steve, I think you're wrong," okay, do you understand the argument? Let's talk about the argument and let's just go from there. Anybody who thinks that these arguments are semantic, just, oh, well, Steve's arguing what's the better definition, or more importantly, people say, well, Steve argues only one correct definition. That's bullshit. That's just ridiculous. I came up with 7 definitions of atheism, and that's fine. Pick one you want. I don't care. But if you pick one, let's talk about what you pick. Well, he picked something unique, because I don't think I recall this particular definition being used as a definition of atheism. I've seen it used as a justification for atheism by Ricky Gervais and by Christopher Hitchens, but I've never seen this particular definition, or excuse me, this particular justification used as a definition. So let me tell you what he uses. And by the way, I'm not ignoring you guys in the Discord here. I'm really not. So I'm keeping track here. I don't have a producer, remember? But if you want to jump in at any time, please do. All right, so his definition is this. He says that that atheism is the position that there are no good reasons to believe that God exists. Okay. Again, I've looked into this. I can't find really anywhere of any consequence that actually has this as the definition or stipulative definition of atheism, which is you're perfectly fine to do. Go ahead, knock yourself out. I have it as a justification to why people hold to atheism, be it whether you hold to a positive or negative position. But this is as held as a justification. And I'm not going to say whether it's a good justification or not. That's irrelevant. But it's a reason why people say God doesn't exist or I don't believe in God. So this is his stipulative usage. Okay, this seems to me, based upon that, to lead to a lot of issues. So I wanted to kind of go through tonight some of these issues and get your guys' take on it. Maybe you guys can help me out, because it's confusing. So I'm going to start off with this. First, have you guys heard him say this before? That atheism is position that there are no good reasons to believe that God exists?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm not just making this up, right? I have listened to some of his stuff. I'll be listening to more in the next week or so. But this is something he said.
Seem like a great definition.
It's got issues, and this is why I want to ask him about it and kind of see where these issues lay. Where does it lead to if you particularly use that specific stipulative definition? And again, I want to make this very clear. I don't care what definition you use. Explain to me your justification for it and what it and what it leads to. And if it leads to problems, how you get around it. That's the conversations I like to have. But that's the conversations I get with most people. But okay. So let's make this as propositional. Okay, TD. If he says atheism is a proposition that there are no good reasons to believe in God exists, then it would be propositional that if P is true, that there are no good reasons to believe that God exists. Would that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I suppose.
Okay, so I mean, I'm just changing the statement into an actual proposition. That's all. The proposition is there are no good reasons to believe that God exists. Right? That's the position, right? So atheism is the position that the proposition that there are no good reasons to believe in God is true. That seems to follow to me. So if atheism is false, it is not the case that there are no good reasons to believe that God exists. Right? That would be the negation. It is not the case that there are no good reasons to believe in God exists. Now, here's a little confusing. Maybe you guys can help me with it. If there's no good reason to believe that God exists, then actually, would it not be the same as saying the negation is there's at least one good reason to believe in God, even though it's not there's a difference there. I mean, it's clearly has a different format, right? But extensionally, they're the same thing, though, are they not? I mean, intention. Well, and by the way, we'll get into intentionality and extensionality one of these days too. I will do a video on that. But extensionally, they're the same thing, meaning that they represent the same concept, right? I don't see anything if you. I mean, we can get into if there's a substitution error that if you substitute one thing for another, you have an intentionality issue, or it's even called a. There's a. What's the name of that? You know what? I gotta get back to my possible worlds theory. Extensionality lost. That's what it's called. Extensionality lost is when you have a loss of extensionality, where you say two sentences that mean extensionally the same thing. They have the same extensional meaning, or they're both true extensionally. But if you change something with it, whether you add a necessary modal operand, or if you say one of a coextensive property, then it will change the value of the proposition. Right. So we've talked about that before. Do you guys remember that? The extensional versus extensional?
Oh, I'm not sure I caught that.
All right. So this is kind of a rabbit hole, but I don't know why I'm going into this because I'm going to do a video on it. But let's say I say, and by the way, most of these sources you can get right from Stanford or you can get from Wikipedia. So I try to take the canonical examples because they're pretty good. So the canonical example would be something along the lines of Lois Lane believes Superman can fly. Okay? That's a true statement, right? She believes Superman can fly. The coextensionality of the statement or the word Superman is also Clark Kent, right? So they should be the same thing. Clark Kent is Superman. So if I replace the word Superman with Clark Kent, I get Lois Lane believes Clark Kent can fly, which is not true, right? This is dealing with what's called opacity versus transparency. The propositional value of the proposition has changed. It has been from true to false, even though I've only changed something with itself. I've substituted something with itself. I've only put Superman, Clark Kent for Superman, but they're the same being, right? So extensionally, they're the same. It means the same thing, but intentionally, there's a difference there, right? So that's what we mean by intentionality with an S, not with a T. So it also gets into various other things like what's called de re and de dicto, which I'll get into too.
Steve, is that the difference between the reality of two differences?
What do you mean?
So, like you said, Lois believes Superman can fly.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, Lois must believe Clark Kent can fly, which she doesn't.
Right.
Right.
Because they're coextensional.
They are both the same entity. Yeah, they're both the same entity in reality. Well, I know it's in the comics, but in reality, they're the same entity. Yet, but by using their different descriptors, you've changed the entire premise of the thought. Exactly.
Right. Because even though there's even though they're both statements that Well, you know what? Let me put it this way. This, like I said, when we talk about extensionality lost, I'll use a canonical example that Stanford uses. All John's dogs are mammals. Okay, and that's written as the universal quantifier, what looks like an upside down A, which is all of X. You don't need to know the logic. So all of John's dogs are mammals. All John's pets are mammals, right? Those are both two statements, right? And they're both the same thing. All of John's pets are mammals because he only owns dogs. All of John's dogs are mammals. Those are both two statements, right? Assuming that is the case, right?
Assuming.
Okay.
Yes.
So the negation would be not all John's dogs are mammals and not all John's pets are mammals. Those are fine too, right? If it's the case that not all John's dogs are mammals, then not all John's pets are mammals because all his dogs are mammals, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I understand the premises of where the word changes. Is it the value of the context?
The actual propositional value. Now, Maki says that this sounds like implicature pragmatics. Grice was trying to clarify. That's speech act theory, right? And so speech act theory, when you're dealing with implications of pragmatics, that deals a lot more with the whole de re and de dicto, whereas how you read a particular sentence. And by the way, I'm not doing this for any reason it has to do with anybody else. I just like to do these things. And Bullinator wants me to use the Discord more. He's been bugging me for several months now. So I'm going to get more used to the Discord, and we got to get more used to the Discord when things get jumping again. So maybe this is my way of kind of getting used to it. But de re and de dicto, it's more along the lines of, let's see here. Let's see. Steve thinks somebody is following him. Okay. If that is read de re, that means that I think that there's actually somebody following me. Somebody that, like, for example, I know Mike's following me. And so if I read that de re, that means that Mike is following me. So if I put Mike as in for someone, that doesn't change the truth value. I think Mike is following me, right? Because I believe somebody's following me. That doesn't change the truth value at all, right? Because the someone is representing Mike. But if I read it de dicto, meaning to the word, if I remember correctly, if I substitute Mike in for that sentence, and it's not Mike I believe is who's following me. I just think somebody is, but I don't know who it is. I have no idea. Somebody is following me. But then I put Mike into that, right? It changes the value of it, right? So in one case, I can put Mike into that, and it doesn't change the value. But the other, read differently, it actually changes the value. It's got to make sense?
Yeah, that anyone, including Mike, could be following you.
Yes. Yeah, somebody.
It is just...
So it's how you read it.
Mike.
Yeah, it's how you read it. Exactly. You're breaking up a little bit.
Geez.
All right, but anyways, we're way off topic here. We'll get into the video on that another time. I wasn't prepared for that. So, all right. So it is not the case that there are no good reasons to believe in God. Now, again, I think the negation to there are no good reasons to believe that God exists, wouldn't it be, and again, I want you guys' help, even though my negation is right, but doesn't that seem to be the case? You could also say extensionally, meaning the same meaning, that there are at least one good reason to believe in God. Would that not have the same propositional value as saying it is not the case that there are no good reasons to believe in God? Just worded differently? Think about that. And I'm asking for your guys' help on this, seriously. To me, they seem like the same thing.
Are you saying that if you say that the proposition that there is at least one good reason to believe in God, that it negates that there are no good reasons to believe in God?
Well, if the proposition is there are no good reasons, okay, this is shortening it, so there's no good reasons, period. Then the negation, if I had just one good reason, just one, that would make that sentence false, right? So if I have the negation as there is at least one or more, or at least one reason to believe in God, right? There's at least one good reason. Would that not be a negation for it? It's just, like I said, to me, it seems extensionally the same.
I mean, if you say there are no good reasons, if you have a good reason, yeah, I guess that would prove the other one false, or it would have to be a negation, I think.
Yeah. Jigsaw Harlequin, who I think, if I remember correctly, knows his stuff, says, it is not the case there are no good reasons. There's at least one good reason, Steve. That holds true. And I think so too, Harlequin. To me, it seemed to make sense to me. But I was pondering over that because, again, it is not worded exactly the same. Usually when you have a negation, it's just that you just say, it's not the case, right? But to me, saying there is not at least one good reason, the negation is there's at least one good reason, right? There exists one good reasons, which is the same thing as saying it is not the case that there are no good reasons. This seems to me, again, essentially the same, but we'll move on from there. So let's assume that the negation it is not the case there are no good reasons to believe God exists. To disprove atheism there, according to, again, keep in mind the scope here. We're keeping in mind the scope of Tjump's usage of the term atheist, right? To disprove atheism would just require somebody showing a single good reason that God exists, right? Rather than showing God doesn't actually exist, right? Which is weird to me.
Is the adding of the words "the case"? Do you have to have those? Does it change the meaning?
No, I don't think so. It's just. I mean, I don't think why it would. It's just when you do a negation, if you want to make sure it's right, you just add it is not the case, right? Not P is. Yeah. It is not the case of P.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. The
sky is blue. It is not the case the sky is blue. That's how you would do a simple semantic negation, right? If you were to translate it into some kind of semantics.
Right. So it basically would be that there is no good reasons. Like that's what it would.
There aren't any good
translate
reasons.
to.
Yeah, So his whole proposition boils down to there are no good there aren't any good reasons to believe in God, basically, right? And the negation would be there is at least one good reason to believe in God because it only take one to show that proposition false.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I mean, would it be at least or equal to one?
Well, and this is where it got confusing because maybe I'm not sure I'm even right on this. Again, this is confusing to me. I like doing concepts with these things. I can't do a logic problem if my life depended on it, except for very, very simple ones, right? I do go into logic checkers and I play around with it, but I don't have that fortitude. I don't do the work. I just try to understand the concepts. So if it is not the case or no good reason to believe in God, the negation should be there are good reasons to believe in God, right? Think about this. The negation should be, if that's your clause, there are good reasons to believe in God. That should be the negation. But if that's the negation, how does only one good reason negate that? Because that's not good reasons. That's a good reason. And I'm probably way overthinking this, but...
Oh, I love overthinking stuff.
That's what I do. I love, dude. Thank you. Somebody who gets it. That's why I just do this. I don't give a shit if anybody even watches. This is stuff I find enjoyable.
So, if you get into the case, and this is almost semantical, right? So, this is semantics. Yes. This is good semantics. If there is no good case for God, and you come up with a good reason for God, right? That changes that case statement. Now, the other thing too is, what if there's a bad reason? Does that change the whole premise?
Right, and I and I get into that. By the way, I do get into that here in my notes. Bad or unjustified reasons. All right, so we'll table that for now because again, I don't know if it's just if there's only one reason to believe in God, does it actually negate the proposition? Because the proposition are there are no good reasons, not just. Would one falsify that?
But wouldn't the person stating the case have to believe that your reason is actually a good reason?
Well, we'll get into that too. What it is for be good, but I think it's kind of irrelevant, right? If there is, let's say there is one good reason. Let's just assume there is one good reason, right? Does that falsify that proposition?
You know what? I think it does, but I was just thinking about it in this case. Like, what if somebody said there are no apples in this crate? Like, you would assume it was empty. Like, that would mean it was empty, right? Or no apples in it, right?
There's at least one apple in the crate. Would falsify
Really?
that.
That's what it means?
Yeah, that would make sense. Thank you. That now that you put it that way, that actually, yeah, because if there's no apples in the crate, it doesn't necessarily have to be plural. It doesn't matter. It's just saying there isn't any apples. It's devoid of apples, right? So to falsify that, all you need is one apple in there. Oh, thank you. That clicked. This is why I do this kind of stuff. I think you're right.
And does not specify fruit, so it could literally just be a phone. An Apple phone.
Yeah, an iPad.
Oh, look, that's an apple.
Yeah. Well, then you again you get into other things about Speech Act, right? You know what?
Oh, yes.
But, all right. So all right,
and then you can just throw away the box.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, yeah, because you could say like there's an apple, in the box, and you say I really like to make bake. I would like to put that apple in a pie. Well, if it's a phone, do you really want to do that? Kind of thing. I don't know. Anyways,
I mean,
go ahead.
I'm not a fan of Apple, so certainly I would.
Yeah, I like apples. Apples are good for you. All right, but I think you guys are right. I think all you guys are right. I think that would obviously falsify. I think I was overthinking that, which is, by the way, one of the hardest problems I have when I write my blog, when I do these a lot of things. My biggest problem is I overcomplicate things. I overthink things. I did it the other day with we're going back on that helium diffusion stuff with Dr. Lachey and Dr. Hankey, Dr. Humphreys from ICR, Young Earth Creationism, and I really was overthinking about it, and the math was pretty simple, and it was just like, I think Humphreys got his math wrong. Just straight up got his math wrong. He did a very poor job in doing his math, and he got to a formula that doesn't match this other formula that he claims it is. One's linear, and the other's a two-slope value. And I'm just like, how did he do this, right? I was just really overanalyzing it, but I asked Landon, and I asked General Han Solo, and I asked two PhDs in physics and one biochemistry and one in geochemistry, and they're like, yeah, the math is clearly wrong. So Humphrey's a young creationist that I think he just purposely got the math wrong, but I can't prove that, right? So, but we'll see. I asked him to point out where Dr. Lachey got his math wrong. We'll see what he says, but I did over think it, I think. All right, so in this particular case, back to Tjump, to disprove Tjump's proposition that atheism, to say atheism is false, you don't have to show there's one good reason, right? Would you agree then?
Yep. You show one good reason, show one good apple.
So it doesn't really matter whether God exists at those points. We're not even talking about the ontology of God. God could actually exist, but if there's no good reasons to believe in God, then you should be an atheist. Again, according to this is how Tjump would have to argue, I think, right?
It's lack theism on steroids.
I'm telling you, this is really bizarre stuff. I've been mulling this for several days now, and I'm like, okay, I just got to go over to some people because this is driving me freaking nuts trying to parse out what he's saying here. Because God could exist, but if there's no good reasons to believe that God exists, then atheism would still be true, right? I mean, based upon his definition, even though God exists. That makes no sense to me.
Not to go completely off topic, but is he tying like beliefs to reasoning? Like, is that even like a right thing to do?
That's why this should be a justification, I think, and not an assertion, right? He's making this as a claim on multiple levels. I mean, he's actually saying there are no good reasons to believe in God, and he's actually saying that atheism should be held as that proposition. Okay, well, let's do that. But then atheism would be true, but God would exist. There'd just be no reason to believe in him. That seems a weird way the way we use these words, right? I mean, why would he want atheists to say, you know what, I'm an atheist, God does exist, but there's no good reasons to believe that he does, so I'm an atheist.
But that throws out the atheist proposition then.
Well, no, that person's accepting the atheist proposition. It is not the case. There are no good reasons to believe that God exists. They accept that. No, wait. Let me see. They're holding that as let's see here. It is not the case. The proposition of atheism would be: it is not the case. There are no good reasons to believe that God exists. Well, they wouldn't even have to hold that true. They would again. This is like lack theism, as you said, I think, in a way, because they would only have to hold that the proposition that he has is false because there's at least one good reason. That's it. That's all they would have to do. They wouldn't even have to affirm the atheist proposition, right? They could be agnostic in that case, and it still would not, to him, that would still fall under atheism. He is lack theist, by the way. But it seems weird because God would exist ontologically, but you would be calling yourself an atheist merely because you hold there's no good reason to believe in him.
What about deism?
Well,
That's a non-believing theist to me.
it would be very similar to that. Yeah, I thought the same thing because a fiat. I think one example, and he actually said this too. He was in a discussion with Dr. Anderson, and I think that was his name. And he had asked, about fiatism. He's like, wait a minute. A fiatist is somebody who holds the position there are no rational reasons to believe in God, right? It's not justifiable, but he believes God and faith alone. Okay. Now, that would be under Tjump's definition, right? They hold there are no good reasons to believe in God, but they still believe in God, right? A fiatist, would you grant that? I think the silence is over. Resounding yes. All right, so if you grant that, then Tjump would have to admit that a fiatist who believes in God is an atheist under his usages. And guess what he does? He actually says that's the case. He actually.
So that just makes atheist meaningless then.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it really changes these words to be. I don't get it, right? Why would you want to call a fiatist who obviously believes in God? Why would you want to label them to be an atheist? Merely because they agree there's no good reasons to believe in God, but they're going to do it anyways.
Does he define what he means by good reason?
That again, I'm way ahead of you, bro. I actually, that's one of my questions. What is the good in the proposition there are no good reasons to believe that God exists? Isn't good subjective here? Right?
Because, I mean, we talked about this before about, like, if God split the, heavens open, would that make you believe in God? And even I was still like, no, because that could be, back in the day, people would see things like technology, they would assume it was magic. Maybe I'm seeing crazy technology way ahead of us.
Well, let's run with that, though. Here's the problem with that. If the skies opened up, the question is, would you believe? Hell's yes, I would believe. Absolutely. I mean, if the stars rearranged themselves and I saw angels coming down and Jesus rode down on a white horse or whatever the hell and voices said, I am the great Jehovah, I would believe absolutely. And then if you said, well, could it be aliens? Sure. But I'm justified for my belief because I'm seeing it. This is what I'd expect. I'm feeling the earth rumble. I'm hearing voices. I'm having things that I just are not way outside my normal day-to-day living, right? I mean, this is way outside my norm. I would be justified to believe. Absolutely, you'd be justified to believe. Could you be wrong? Sure. So what?
You said it was be exactly what you'd expect. Isn't that confirmation bias or something?
No. I mean, what would be expect if God was real based upon the Bible? Well, the Bible says that when Jesus returns, there'll be heralding of the trumpets and the sky will part, be voices from the skies, earthquakes, all that kind of stuff. Those would be what we expect, would it not?
Well, I don't think there's any possible way that a mortal can be proven that anything is.
Why do you have to prove it? Who says anything about proving? We're just talking about. We're not talking about proving, right? That's not the proposition. The proposition is, have we proved God exists? No. The proposition is, would you believe it? Would you be justified? Sure. Justification of beliefs doesn't require proof. A proof, right? It doesn't require anything. It just requires reasons, right? Sufficient reasons to believe. Do you have sufficient reasons to believe if God is standing right in front of you, Jesus is, and the earth is shaking and the stars are moving and spelling out his name, Jehovah or Allah, or whatever the hell. That's, to me, that's definitely justification to believe. Absolutely. You don't think that would be justification? Now, again, you could still deny it and you could still say, well, my brain's telling me that it's not true. So I don't believe it. But for somebody else who says, this convinces me, I believe this because that's the way the brain works. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a perfectly justified. I think it would be perfectly justified belief. Who cares if it's aliens? Who cares if it's an illusion? It makes no difference. That's not the question.
Yeah, look at the different ways you can state justified true belief. You can have justified belief, justified truth, true belief, or there's so many different ways that those three words can be put. And either way, some part of that thing that you are either believing or to be true is going to be justified in some way in your own mind.
Well, yes and no. I mean, you can attack the justifications, right? And that's what people generally do when they go into these discussions to undermine theism, is they'll attack the justifications, which rightly so. I have no problem with that. I think that's a good way of going about doing it, right? By the way, if there's people joining, you're going to have to let me know because I have to give you mods. But
Yeah, but then you could just take that true belief statement. Okay, so it's a belief you hold, and then something comes true, therefore your belief held to be true.
Well, a true belief is a belief.
Because you've seen
Well, hang on. A true belief is a belief that the proposition is true, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that proposition is that God will come down, the trumpets will sound, blah blah blah. Therefore, your true belief has been prophesized, basically.
Well,
and
but that's
you
not the
then
case.
See it.
No, that's not the case. That's
Yeah,
that's
then
not what
you
we
see
mean.
it. It's not. Yeah, but it's not a bias that's coming into it. It's the fact that something that's meant to happen happens.
But that's not what we mean by true belief, right? A true belief is let's say I believe. We'll start simple. I believe 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, you accept arguendo that I hold that belief. 1 + 1 = 2. Okay.
Yes.
Is that 1 + 1 is 2? Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, we know that's true because that's an analytical proposition based upon mathematical axioms, right? So there's no question there. That is a true belief, right? But other things might not be so cut or dry, right? There might be things that I believe, right, that I don't know whether they're true or not, but I believe them. But I believe that is true. I have to believe that is true, actually. So I believe that is true, and it is true. Let's say that the proposition is true. It is the case that it's true. That is a true belief, right? No matter how you arrive at why P is true, whether it be correspondence theory or some kind of deflationary theory, whatever reason, it doesn't matter. Let's assume P is true. If I believe it, that's a true belief. Now, the problem runs into is there's some theories out there like reliabilism that say that in order to have true belief, you have to have a reliable mechanism to get to it. But there's a professor, her name's Dr. Linda Zaleski. She argued quite well that the problem called the swamping problem, that if you have a reliable mechanism, there is really no difference between those statements. It is true, it is a true belief, and is knowledge. They're indistinguishable from each other. Because if you say P is true, then you're saying you believe that P is true. Those are the same sentence, especially in deflationary theories. If I also say that I know P is true, if it's because of reliabilism, it makes no difference because the way she explains it, a coffee pot or espresso maker that works most of the time or is reliable makes just as fine coffee as that which is unreliable. The coffee is exactly the same. There's nothing value added to say this coffee was made by a reliable espresso maker, right? So by saying knowledge, what are you adding value-wise to the statement over just true belief? They all mean the exact same thing. So you got to keep it, what theory you're running with, which I don't go by reliabilism. I do go by justified true belief. But I just thought I'd throw that out there because when we're talking about true belief,
so
it just has to be true, and you just have to believe it.
Yeah, I like that both coffee statement. Both coffees are the same.
Yeah, they're both good coffee,
you
right?
have no idea which machine either came from, basically.
Yeah. So if you say I know this is good coffee, is that any different than just saying I believe it's good coffee at that point? Based upon reliabilism, because if it was an unreliable coffee maker, right? Because you only say you know something if it's reliable, right? In reliabilism, but if it's not a reliable coffee maker, then the knowing is the same thing as saying I have a true belief. There's no value added there. That's the way I understand it. Maybe I'm getting a little wrong, but like I said, I wasn't really.
I don't care if it's a crappy coffee machine as long as it makes a good coffee.
Right. Yeah. So how do you get to the true part? Well, there's a couple of different mechanisms. Now, I know Tjump, he defers to correspondence theory, right? He'll say that what is true corresponds with reality. So there's some truth maker, some fact of the matter about reality, some state of affairs that makes that proposition true. Now, I don't necessarily hold that theory. I do tend to more of a deflationary, and I think there's probably reasons for that. A deflationary theory is just something is true because it's held to be true, such as the canonical thing is snow is white because snow is white. Oh, no, excuse me. Snow is white if and only if snow is white. Right? So if you say snow is white, or if you say it is the case that snow is white, or if you say snow is white is true, or I believe snow is white, those are all saying the exact same statements. There's no difference between any of them. And if you think about it, that kind of makes sense, right? If I say snow is white, And I do it propositionally. There's a way to what's called, if I remember correctly, dequotationalism, if I remember the word, to dequote. If I dequote the proposition from a statement to a proposition that makes it true or false, the statement "snow is white" can be dequotationalized. If I believe I'm pronouncing it right, to just mean I believe is the case that snow is white, or just basically snow is white. The proposition snow is white. It sounds weird, I know, right? But I tell people all the time, you say, look, I believe God exists is the same thing as stating God exists. In deflationary theory, think about that. What's the difference? One's a statement, right? You're stating it is the case, and assuming you're an honest agent, then you believe it.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
The all the statements that you just gave, that God exists, I believe God exists, so on and so forth. That's not the issue with Tjump as I see it.
Okay.
I see it as he's saying his proposition and giving a justification all rolled up into one ugly sentence.
Oh, that's exactly what he's doing. Yes. That's what I said at the very beginning, 1,000%. I think he's taking, because Christopher Hitchens and Ricky Gervais, they used this as well, this exact quote. Probably what he got it from, right? But they used it as justification. They didn't use it as, specifically that I saw, as the necessary and sufficient condition for atheism, which is what Tjump is using it for.
Okay, but how can you earnestly deconstruct it into P not P when the sentence isn't even really an honest sentence?
Well, it's propositional though, right? There are either good reasons or they're not good reasons, right? It is propositional. You can take that sentence and again dequotationalize it into a proposition. If I say there are no apples, right? That's a statement, but I can make it into a proposition. P equals there are no apples, and that is either true or false.
But when y'all brought up the apples earlier, whoever it was, I had an issue with that too, because I feel like the example of the apples is not comparable with the sentence that Tjump and Christopher Hitchens and the like use. I don't feel that the sentence with the apple had enough information in it to be comparable. I think something more akin to what they're saying would be like, there's no apples in this case because that's the way it is, or something like that. There's missing information in the apple sentence that is included in the God don't real sentence.
I'm not really following.
I don't think we were comparing apples to the entire statement, just the one part about beliefs.
Yeah, well, one specifically, does one apple qualify as a negation? If it says no apples, right, that's plural. I was thinking about that. Again, I was overthinking it. No apples would mean two or more apples to me. But I was like, even one apple still would you still say there's one apple in there, but you would say there's no apples in there if there's none, right? But if there's one in the apple and they say, well, the statement there's no apples in there is wrong, there is one apple in there. So the plural has nothing to do with anything. I was overthinking that because it's late and I'm caffeinated.
Look, you can't compare apples to atheists anyways.
There you go. Thank you. Waiting for somebody to say that, right? So far, I mean, like I said, we scratched the surface and I haven't gone anywhere yet. So here you have a situation. Would you guys agree, though, based upon his usage, that one, you have somebody who believes in God that is an atheist, and two, you have a possible situation where God exists, and there are good reasons. They might be unknown, right? Right? They might be unknown reasons, but they could exist. And let's say they did exist, and you have somebody that believes that there are no good reasons. Well, let's see. You have somebody who believes there's no good reasons, but God exists. They would be an atheist, even though God does exist, and they could say, "Okay, I believe God exists, but I have no good reasons. There's no good reasons to believe that God exists." Or they can say that God. Let me think here. Let's see here. God could exist, but there would be no good reasons to believe in God. There you go. So you would have a situation where God could exist and somebody could believe in God, but base it upon the fact that there's no good reasons to believe in God, they would be called an atheist, even though they believe God exists. That to me is weird. I can't wrap my head around that.
That also seems like a good reason, actually, to believe in God. That even if our reason is lacking, he could still exist.
Well, then
in
you get
itself.
into because then you get to bare possibilities, right? There's an infinite number of bare possibilities that are possible, and if you start saying, well, just because something's possible, we should believe it, that bloats your ontology.
Not necessarily that you should believe it, but it's still a decent reason for people
I don't
who
think
wants
so.
to believe.
I don't think bare possibilities are decent reasons to accept something. There's a bare possibility there's an invisible, and I hate doing this. This is what I get on atheists for, but sometimes the example actually works. So in this case, it actually works. There's a bare possibility that there's an invisible elephant in my room. Should I believe it? Well, no, because I would expect there to be certain things. If there was even if it was invisible, I should be able to still hear it, see it, smell it, see scat, whatever. Right? So just because there's a bare possibility that there exists in some possible world a invisible elephant, yes, that's true. That's not enough to reason for me to accept it. That's just me a bare possibility, they're called.
I like using ninjas for that example.
Yeah. But in
There's
that
a ninja
example,
in your room. Don't you see him?
Yeah.
Because he's so good.
right. I mean, should I accept that? Clearly most people would say no, right? Because yes, it's a bare possibility, but it does not weigh enough evidence to me. This does not weigh enough to make my mind go, yeah, I should accept that, right?
But isn't it what I'm not sure the exact term, the fideicist or something you talked about earlier? Isn't it what they...
A fideist says there's no good reasons to believe in God, but they do anyways. And it's not rational. It's not a rational position. It's not irrational.
Right.
It's irrational, but to be rational, you have to justify, right? So they recognize it's not a justified position. They recognize it's not a rational position, but they still hold to it anyways, which is fine.
Right. But Tjump is asking for a belief, not necessarily a justified true belief. Like
I get that.
It's just a category of belief.
But a fideist believes in God, right?
Right.
Okay, so a fideist believes in God, but he agrees with Tjump that there are no good reasons to believe in God. He would fulfill the necessary sufficient condition to be an atheist, according to Tjump. So he would call a fideist an atheist, which he has, by the way. He did bite the bullet on that one.
Yeah, it's really faulty a definition from Tjump for sure.
This is some problems I have with this. Riley says, what do you think about this? If we can't definitely verify the truth of things, the knowledge will always be accidental and immaterial to our model building of reality. See, I think we can. Now, I understand you're talking about things that are outside our epistemic limits, things like brain in a vat and matrix simulations. I think there's ways around certain things, and I think there's certain ways to describe reality such that you can have a foundational framework to know the veracity of things and the verticality of things. I think there are different things where you can, what's called the epistemic closure principle, that you can accept or deny to try to work around whether you're a brain in a vat or you have two hands in reality. Moore's I have a hand argument. But I don't think it's accidental, right? Knowledge really can't be accidental in some theories, right? That's because that's called epistemic luck. I mean, remember the whole barn scenarios? If you're driving through Barnville and there's a whole bunch of barns that they put up to make it look cool and they're all fake but one, and you're driving by that one and you point to your kid and say, hey, look, there's a barn. Did you know that was a barn? Now, in some theories, yeah. In some theories, no. I mean, because it was an accident. Because all the other barns were fake. You just happened to get the right one. So there was an epistemic luck issue. This is one of the Getty Air problems, right? So in that particular case, no, you didn't know it. You just got lucky. Right? So in that case, it would be accidental. But in some other theories, that still would be knowledge. So it really depends on what theory you're working with, Raleigh, I think. And again, I'm really pulling this out my ass right now. So if people that are experts on this listen to this later, hopefully they'll go, okay, we got a few issues here, which is fine. I mean, but
I have serious questions about why there's a town filled with fake barns.
Well, they wanted to look cool. Yeah.
Barns aren't cool though.
Yeah, I don't know. It was proposed by I think it was a Gettyer's paper, if I'm not mistaken, but it could be one of the other philosophers. But maybe I don't know if it was Gettier or not. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't Gettier. Who did Fake Barnville? Let's look it up. This is where I have Google. Fake Barnville. I don't know if that was even the town it was called. Yeah, get a year. Looks like. So. I think. All right. But anyways, it really doesn't matter. All right. So moving on here. All right. So in order to falsify atheism, again, you just provide one good reason to believe in God. So I want to ask, are there any prudential reasons to believe that God exists? Prudentialism. So what that would mean, prudentialism is an approach where you basically say, you do something because you want to avoid something bad, right? It's a moral principle based upon what's called precautionary principles that you want to avoid some negative effect. If you look it up in Wikipedia, or something bad. So to be prudential, right? You want to do something that is precautionary merely because if you don't, you could have a very bad conclusion.
That would be a Pascal's wager, basically.
No, I don't. No, because these are moral principles. These are oughts, right? These are what you ought to do to avoid a particular negative effect. I mean, at least be morally justified to do something, right? I mean, if we think that Russia is going to attack us, and we launch a preemptive strike, right? That's prudentialism, right? We're acting before we have verification that they've launched or anything like that. We're doing or we think they're going to launch. That's a preemptive strike on them, right? Are we morally justified to do a precautionary strike, to act first in order to avoid a more negative effect of them launching their missiles and killing us? That's essentially prudentialism.
Would you know that they're going to attack you, or do you think it's a potentiality?
You just have to believe it. There's always the potential.
Right.
The potentiality is always there, right? They could launch any second. We always know that. And in some possible world, they've already launched. In some possible world, this is all a nuclear wasteville, right?
I saw that on Sliders.
I used to love that show. Dude, that show was one of the best shows until it jumped the shark. And once it jumped the shark, I couldn't watch it any longer. I think once the pixie cut girl left, I think it went downhill after that. Got really weird. All right, so if you could now again, I'm not going to claim to Tjump whether there are or not prudential reasons, but I think I could come up with some prudential reasons to believe in God exists. I mean, if you lived in a country where atheists are put to death, and if you believe that there are no gods or you don't believe the Islamic gods, you're going to die. Wouldn't it be prudential to believe in God at that point? Because the consequences, if you don't, would be that they kill you. So to avoid a negative effect, it would be a prudential reason, which is a good reason, which is a moral good, right? Because I don't know what he's meaning by good, right? I'm going to assume right now moral good, which is the right course of action given a set of circumstances. Go ahead.
I think you would say that it's not. It wouldn't be a true. Like, you wouldn't really believe it. You just try to avoid the consequence.
No. Let's assume that you really believe it, right? And the good reason that you believe it is not necessarily to get out. I mean, I see what you're saying. But let's assume that. Well, let's assume this. You're not believing it per se because you know that you're going to be killed, right? I don't think it really matters to you as an individual. Right. I think what it matters is that as a society, if your kid doesn't believe this Allah, that kid's going to die. So you're going to teach that that kid, to be indoctrinated to believe, because whatever his reasons are, you're going for the fact that you want that kid to believe in God for prudential reasons to not be killed. Right. So it is beneficial to him based upon it is a good reason to believe in God for that child, because if not, he's going to die.
Would that be the reason that you give to the child so that he believes, or you would not tell him that and just give him
I don't
other
know.
reasons?
That's a good question, right? Again, does it for prudentialism? Does the kid have to know that the consequences exist to make that moral choice?
Well, because if he believes that, if the kid himself believes that he's only gonna have to do it so he avoids death, then it's going to pretty much be the same thing as we said earlier. Like, you're just believing because you're trying to avoid a consequence. You're not really believing.
Well, I don't think
that's what he would have.
I don't think that's the problem. I don't think you can force yourself to believe something. I'm a dosastic voluntarist. I think that our beliefs choose us. We don't choose our beliefs. Our beliefs happen, and then we recognize them, very, very short time later.
Right, I agree, but then that would not be a pedantic reason to believe, no?
Say again?
Well, in the case that she didn't believe just to avoid a consequence, then why would it be a
Yeah,
a
no, I
pedantic,
see your
think?
point. No, you raise a good objection actually, because she's not using atheism at that point, and this is what I'm glad that we're doing this because although I don't think Tjump would figure this out, but I want to I want to already be prepared for everything. You're right, because maybe she's not avoiding the consequence, right? Because she's not saying I believe to avoid the negative consequence, right? Because she can't force herself to believe. So what would be a good prudential reason then? Oh, how about this? The child of the person says, I believe in God, even though it's not rational to believe in God, on faith alone, and then said, like a fiatist, right? And it also says, and I'm a fiatist. Well, no, that wouldn't work either. Shoot.
The theist is already atheist according to T-Jumps.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I mean, according to T-Jump's argument, wouldn't fear of death, couldn't you include that as a good reason to believe, even though,
No,
for me it doesn't make sense.
Then it does get into Pascal's rage a little bit, right? That it's not really a good reason to believe in God merely because of the afterlife.
But that's the thing. Like, we're talking about belief, but we're not necessarily bringing the justified and truth part into it. Like,
yeah. I mean,
because his thing is really open. I think he's really only attacking the belief side of things. I could be wrong, but
no, I don't think he's even addressing the belief. I don't think he cares about the belief. He's only saying that there's no good reason to believe in God. Now, I'll give you an example of a good prudential reason, right? Let's say that I'm a cancer patient, and I have a new drug that I'm going to be using that has not really been tested that much, but it has, obviously it's safe to use, but I want to, to live for my daughter, right? I have a prudential reason to believe that drug is going to help me because it is actually a fact that a positive outlook on treatment for cancer and things like that, it does have a marginally better prognosis than people that with bad outlooks, right? We've noticed this, right? People that I don't know if it's thought, whatever the reason is, your body responds, but people that actually have better outlooks respond better. There's an objective fact of the measure to be had there.
so that would be the reason why.
So you would say, look, I believe this drug's going to help me, and I believe it because I have to live for my family. I want to live for my family because I want to live for my family. You know what? I do believe that this is the case, and your brain's telling you this case. Your brain wants you to live, right? So if that's the case for that, then would it not be very similar to the person who says, hey, look, brain's telling me I want to live, so I believe God exists. I don't know. Maybe there's not a correlation there. But I think my example with the drug is actually good. I think that's actually a good prudential reason. It justifies at least. It at least justifies it, right?
Well, he also said that what justified this belief was that people heard about it, that it was good and it worked better on other patients.
Right, but like I said,
go
ahead. Ooh, you're loud. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think it justifies the will to live, not the belief.
Well, no, because believing the drug will help you is justified because believing it help you will help you. Right? Believing in this particular case, having a positive outlook when you're going through cancer treatment does help you. It's not like taking it's not like going to just like woo-woo medicine, right? You're not going to like a woo-woo person and saying, "Hey, give me some magical water." In that particular case, it's not really justified because we know woo-woo water's shit, right? And that. But a drug that says, you know what, there's a potential this drug might work. It's not really that tested. Slim chances, right?
But that's how placebos work as well.
But we're not talking about placebos though, right? And we're talking about an actual medication. When you're going through a regimen of cancer treatment, it is better to have a better outlook on your prognosis. So there's a prudential reason to think that the drug is going to help you, that you're justified through prudentialism, not necessarily through evidentialism.
Well, I don't know if I can help out here because I have actual a little bit of what do you call it, experience in this situation, except for it's almost like the opposite, where I have had to switch drugs that I've been taking for my rheumatoid arthritis and my fibromyalgia so much that I'm always afraid that I'll take a drug, I'll feel the placebo effect, tell the doctor it's great, keep me on it for a year, and then suddenly it just stops working. And so I try to go in like forcing myself not to feel positive or negative, just to be even. Whatever happens, happens. Like I can't.
Well,
like,
yeah, you're in a different situation. Right? This wouldn't be something that's applicable in your case, obviously.
Okay, I didn't know.
Jigsaw says it would have to be true that the drug will help you, but it is justified. It has potential. I don't think it has to be true that the drug will help you, right? You could still die, right?
Yeah, I can see the point actually. Like you start believing it because maybe it's your only hope to live or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if it's your only hope to live, you're going to die anyway. So you know what? It's better to hope on this experimental drug to save your life. And I probably should throw that out at the beginning as a qualifier, and I usually do, and I forgot about that. So thank you. This is a last ditch effort, right?
It's like when people are on a boat and they suddenly start praying God.
No, I don't think that's. I don't think that's justified.
But that would be a pedantic belief, no?
I don't think it's the same thing because drugs we know have helped people, right? Now, you don't have to know that this particular drug will save your life, but we trust doctors. We know that doctors are going to give us, medicine that help us. We've seen this has happened before. There's at least a reason to at least believe that drug will help you because it's obviously helped somebody or it's done something. They've done clinical studies. Praying, there's nothing to back that, right? There's just nothing to back that. So that's not justified. I don't think in that case.
Right.
It's not prudential either.
But then if you believe in it only because it helped some people and it's proven by science, it's no longer just because it's your only hope.
Oh, if that's what you mean. No, if you say, look, I believe in God and that belief is actually causing me to get better, right? If there's an actual relationship between that, then yes, that would be a justified prudential belief. Yes.
No. I can see that too, but I mean, I'm saying like, let's say you're on a boat or on an airplane and suddenly things go wrong. And some people, they really do, like they just start being believers, even and it's not a big proof, but even Patrice O'Neill was making a sketch about it.
Are they
he
really?
was only a believer on airplanes.
Yeah, are they really? Yeah, I don't think they really are believers. What I think.
Oh, no, but I mean, they ask God like for help, like they turn to God in a sense, just for the moment, just out of fear, but
I don't know.
They have this kind of.
I don't know if that means that. I don't think that entails a belief. I could pray to God and not believe God exists by thinking, you know what? I'm just going to throw this out there. Hey, God, if you do exist, blah blah blah. That doesn't mean I believe in God. I'm still praying to Him, right?
Yeah, no, I would say it's probably closer to what they're doing. It's closer to hypocrisy, but
yeah, possibly.
When my uncle was dying, they asked everybody to say a prayer for him. I did, but I mean, my belief did not increase at all. So,
yeah, but what was your uncle a believer before, or what did he become a believer at the end with this suffering?
The last time I talked to him, he was an atheist.
Right, and he kind of started to believe on his hospital bed or dead bed, if you want.
Not that I know.
No, okay.
All right, so I'm not convinced that yet that if there's prudential reasons to believe God exists, would it show that atheism is false, right? I'm not convinced yet. I think there's work to be had on that though, right? Because if you could think of one prudential reason to think there's a good reason that God exists, it would falsify atheism in his model. Right? If it doesn't even have to be a potential reason; it could be any reason, right? Just one good reason to think that God exists. All right.
You should just go full Dart Dawkins on him.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I do think there are some good reasons to believe God exists, right? Because I mean, if you've had experience of some kind, or you think that you have, and to you that, and again, I get flack for this, and I'm happy to change my position on this. This is tentatively, very tentative, like most positions are, but this is more so tentative than most. But if I hold that God exists because of something that has happened to me, that has only been happened to me, that I've seen or witnessed something that to at least justify that belief, to me, right? To me, that would mean that there is a good reason that for God to exist. There is a good reason for me to believe in God, which would violate the premise.
Yeah, but I think he might just say, well, it's an anecdotal faith.
Anecdotal. Yeah. No, that's true too. Of course, it's anecdotal. But okay, let's try this. Let's go for broke here. That let's just say there are good reasons to believe in God, and they're unknown. Okay, that we just don't know that they exist, right? But they exist somewhere. The proposition then seems to be that it seems to be like that he's saying ontologically that there are no good reasons, but let's assume that there's reasons that exist that we can't know about. Then let's see here. I'm working with this here. This is my brain, how I think here. If there are reasons that exist but they're not known, he's saying there are no good reasons, period, known or unknown. I could posit that there are good reasons, but they're not known, and see if he agrees or disagrees. Right? Is that possible for him to? If I say Tjump, would you agree that there could be good reasons, they're just not known, or do you think he would say no? There's no good reasons, known or unknown. He'd probably say.
I think he would say that. I think it would say, yeah, if they're not known, then I can't know. But if they are known, then there is a good reason.
Well, not necessarily. If they're not known, doesn't mean you can't know. It just means we haven't discovered them yet.
Yeah, but you can't make that argument.
Now, there is an argument out there, Finch's paradox, that says that if propositions are true, then and we are not omniscient being, if we're not omniscient, then all truths are known, or something like that, right? I don't remember the exact premises, but there's a paradox out there. Have you heard of Finch's paradox? No? Okay. It goes something along the lines, it's called Finch's paradox of knowability. It basically says that under the K principle that all propositions, if all propositions are true, then all propositions are knowable. Okay, so if something is true, that you can know it to be true. Right? And I disagree with that. I think there are truths out there that could be false, or it could be unknown. I'm sorry. There could be no propositions that are true, but they're just outside of our epistemic limit. So I don't know if I really hold to the K principle, which is this was an argument against anti-realism.
Yeah, I agree with your position, actually.
Yeah, but the anti-realist says, I guess, that the K principle would be that all propositions that are true implies that all propositions can be known. If that's the case, though, then if all truths are knowable, that in truths all tales are known, which is really weird because obviously all truths are not known. We are not omniscient beings. And some of them were trying to relate it to God. And they'll say, well, God knows all things because it has to exist in a mind that to know something, right? So if the proposition is that all propositions are true, all propositions that are true are knowable. If they're knowable, then that means that all propositions are known through some logic stuff. Then that would only hold true, obviously, if God exists, because we're not omniscient beings. That's one way I think out of it. I know I'm going to do something on this Finch paradox one of these days. I think it's really a weird paradox.
Steve, quick warning from native atheist: watch out, Tjump's a heavy hitter.
He hits like a softball.
Anyways, I'm gonna head off. It's 11:30. It's too fucking late for this shit. Do it earlier, please. Good night.
Good night, bud. Yeah, I do this stuff a little later. You know what? I'm sorry. I didn't see people trying to get in here. I'm doing these like 10 o'clock my time or something like that.
Yeah. I know. It's 11:30 now.
Yeah. Like I said, people wanted some late night stuff to go to and talk about this kind of stuff. So I'm gonna be doing that twice a week on this particular channel. But anyways, Bragwin and John Buck, I just give you not mods. I give you user rights, so you can find the channel that we're in now if you want to come back in. So my apologies for that. I wasn't paying attention. This is a great time for Aussies, right? Yeah. No, I'll do something on Finch's paradox another time, I think, because I got to break down the logic myself. I have a little bit. I looked at it.
Dinner time here.
Oh, what are you eating?
I just had a chicken chasseur and creamy potatoes.
Oh,
Sounds good.
I'm on a diet, so I really hate you right now.
I have a question before I forget. It was about something that was said earlier, but it's I tried looking up an answer, but I couldn't find anything that was satisfied my mind. When it comes to reasons to believe in God specifically, are there any reasons that wouldn't be anecdotal?
Well, I mean, people could believe like the obviously like Aquinas' 5 ways. People can believe Plantinga's modal ontological argument. They can believe Anselm's ontological arguments. They can believe, they can think that these things. They even say that the Kalam, right? Now, I don't particularly hold that position, right? Tjump is just saying by fiat, hey, there's no good reason. But to a theist, they may say, you know what? I think these are good reasons. I mean, who is he to judge? This is my question: is what do you mean by good reasons? I mean, why? This is subjective in that case, right? Somebody who says, hey, I think the prime mover argument is a good argument to believe in God, that's pretty subjective, is it not? What we mean by we think it's a good argument? I mean, the argument from contingency is not a horrible argument. It doesn't really get you anywhere, but it's not one of the worst ones I've seen. Maybe somebody will say, hey, you know what? It's no better, no worse than any other of them. Maybe even say it's unjustified because all things being equal, what are you going to pick? God is a metaphysical necessity. God is a contingent being or an infinite regress. Okay, you know what? I'm going to say that he's a metaphysical necessity. Okay, fine, whatever. But they think that's a good reason. They think that it's a good reason that metaphysical necessity exists for the reasons of the universe, and that reason happens to be God. Tjump comes along and says subjectively, well, that's not a good reason. Well, then you're arguing what's good reasons, what's not good reasons, which there's nothing wrong with that, but is that really what the atheist thinks, theist distinctions to be? Do you want the contradictory of theism and atheism to be that? Or should it not be about the ontology of God existing? I don't know why he's changing all these things to mean something bizarre.
Yeah, this comes to a little bit of Hitchens. The question is, why me? And then the cosmos turns around and gives you no answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think you should be. I don't think the cosmos itself is going to answer your questions. But it's funny you mentioned Hitchens because this came from a Hitchens debate, by the way. This is a lot of his stuff that Tjump does is from William Lane Craig and Christopher Hitchens, right?
Oh dear. Yeah. Okay. So I have watched many Hitchens Lane Craig debates, and I've also read God is Not Great. Now the thing is, if you mistake the conversation with what was being said, and then just take that piece out of the conversation, that as you were stating at the start of this conversation we had, it's about meaning and context of where words are inserted and how words are spoken and how this happens and that happens, and that would all depend on the question. Will depend on the answer.
How many debates do they have?
Oh shit!
I don't
at least a dozen I know of.
Really? I'm gonna have to watch some of them. I know I watched one or two, but I didn't know there's that many. Holly Quinn says if he asserts there are no good reasons to believe in God, ask him why justify. But he goes full circle. Yeah, no, I plan that. He has. That's a claim because I don't think Tjump recognizes that's a claim. I'm not positive he understands. That is making a positive assertion, right? He is making a positive assertion. And this is, okay, so this is from a Craig and Hitchens debate. So let me ask you this. And this was a blog, so just take it for what it's worth, right? It's not some peer review source. But Christensen responds to Hitchens' speech by saying that he has no positive arguments to show that atheism is true. Okay? That's what William Craig says. Now, if you're Tjump is understanding that, then it would be saying Craig responds to Hitchens' speech by saying that he has no positive arguments to show that there's no good reasons to believe that God exists, or there are no good reasons to believe that God exists, right? But that's not the uses they're using there that Craig is using. Craig is using the statement atheism is true as the proposition there is no gods, right? Clearly, because he's talking about ontology, right? He's talking about atheism. If atheism is true, then there are no gods. That's the proposition. But the way Tjump is using it as atheism is true would mean that there's no good reasons to believe in God, which is clearly not what Craig meant. But he gets a lot of this stuff from Craig and Hitchens' debates. He says which is weird.
That's the fall down, because I mean, you've seen how William Lane Craig lays out his arguments, right? And he shoehorns his God into most.
Oh, sure, he's sly and slick. I get it, but I mean, he doesn't commit any logical fallacies as far as formal logical fallacies. Informal is a different case, but he doesn't create any formal. These are logically valid things that he says. I mean, he's not an idiot; he's a well-educated man. So when he says atheism is true, he's actually saying there are no gods, right? And so he's saying to Hitchens there are no positive arguments to show that there are no gods. I disagree with that. I think there are positive arguments to show there are no gods, right?
Yeah, because the other throw up on that is, so you know how there is possibly a good reason for God. Well, is there also a good reason for there to not be a God?
And that's the same thing, exactly. I brought that up in here as well. Look, if there's good reasons to believe there's God, there's got to be good reason to believe there's not God. I think they kind of go hand in hand in that regard, which is weird because in this blog here, guy goes on and says this is a misrepresentation of the atheist position. And the part of Craig debating Trick to shift the burden onto his opponent when he's the one advancing the positive claim. Well, this is actually bullshit. This is straight up wrong. It's not a misrepresentation. The atheist position is God does not exist in philosophy, which generally speaking, when I say atheism in philosophy, I just basically mean it's more normative. That's all I mean by it. There's something called philosophical atheism. And if you hear the term philosophical atheism, every time I've ever seen it used, it's generally referring to the positive case, right? So that's the distinction between philosophical atheism and what people call colloquial atheism.
Yeah, well, as soon as someone says, I have proof or evidence of God, that's the positive claim that holds the burden of proof.
Well, you don't have to say proof, right? Unless you mean proof as in just like evidence, not an actual proof. If you say
that's the fallacy.
Yeah, if I say I have a good argument for God, then I should demonstrate that I have a good argument for God. If I say I believe in God, I don't really have to demonstrate anything, right? If I say God exists, do I have to demonstrate? That's just my belief, right? So if I say God exists, do I have any onus?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's a positive claim.
But who's the onus to?
The onus is on you you stating something exists. Does it?
Does it?
And that's the following.
Does it have assoteric force, or is it just a self-assessment? Because under deflationary theory, again, saying that God exists is merely saying, well, I believe God exists. What's the difference? They're both saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, but you threw in believe.
When I say God exists, God exists means
T-Jump will get you.
But no, I get that. But saying God exists is the same thing as saying I believe God exists. So they're the same equivalent statements.
Yes.
No, because beliefs can be true or false.
Yeah, and T-Jump will...
Well, so could God exist.
Go at you. It will go at you the moment you make that difference of opinion.
God exists can be true or false too.
Yeah.
Now, changing the proposition, you're right on that. It does change the proposition. Again, we're talking about deflationary theory, but if I remember correctly. But yeah, you're right. It changes the proposition, right? The proposition, I believe God exists, being true or false, is not the same as proposition as the proposition of God existing is true or false. Those are two different propositions. I agree with you there, right? Does that make sense? Because if the proposition is, I believe God exists, well, we know that's false because I don't hold that belief, right? That's a different proposition.
God exists is turning that proposition into almost a fact.
Well, these are fact statements, right? You're asserting them as facts, right? When I say I believe God exists, I'm asserting that to be the case. I'm asserting that as a fact. Just like I say God exists, I'm asserting that fact. These two statements to me are equivalent to this having the same assoteric force.
Yeah.
Is it to somebody else or just to
belief is
yourself?
upon you. Yeah, the belief is upon you, but the existence is upon everybody else.
The belief is yours, right? Yeah, the belief is yours, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
when you say it exists, that means everyone must be able to see what exists.
I don't think so. Again, it depends on your theory, right? Because if I just say God exists, I could just be saying to you, well, that's just my self-assessment. I'm not stating it in a way that I'm going to proffer any evidence for it. I'm just stating it. That's my belief, right? Because again, they really do have the same, to me, astral force. I believe that God exists and God exists. I don't see any difference.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yeah, I think that's bullshit too, actually. But that's a whole different video.
I mean, in my life, I've taken quite a few medicines when for the brain. Well, not really, like 2 so far, anxiety and depression medication. But I've learned over time that my view or my version of reality is like, in some ways, it's just completely not even close. But my wording, I've tried to change my wording all the time. I use I believe statements for everything because I want to, I'm almost asking somebody to confirm what I'm saying. I believe that there's 4 tables in the kitchen or 4 chairs in the kitchen. I believe the cat is in the bathroom. I'm not going to say these things are a fact, but if somebody else can confirm it with me, maybe then I'll use a different statement.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're because yeah, no, I see how you're using it there. I kind of should say, that that more deflationary would be more. God exists, and it is true that God exists. Those are exactly the same statements. Propositional wise, they even change, right? The proposition is true that God exists, and the proposition that just God exists. There's absolutely no difference between those statements. One deflates into the other. When you say God exists, you're saying it is true that God exists. So saying it is true that God exists is redundant, right? It doesn't add anything to it. Okay. So the question is, with the belief, does it add anything to it? When you the difference between saying I believe rather than just merely stating it, because again, those are 2 different propositions, but do they advance the same type of?
It makes it personal.
When I say I believe, it's like my reality versus a shared reality. Like if I say that I believe that my other microphone's on, that's my reality. But if I say the other microphone's on, that means I'm trying to express the shared reality.
Yeah, but I don't think that really matters in propositional logic, right? I mean, if we're talking about beliefs, then I personally, if somebody says that I believe God exists, they're making a claim, right? They're still making a claim, right? They're holding it to the case to be that it is true that God exists. Would you agree?
I don't know, because you said that you could believe for no good reason, so
right, but it's still the case. It's just you're just no good reasons, but you're still affirming it to be the case. You're affirming that it to be true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if I say I believe that God exists, I'm affirming it to be the case. I'm affirming theism is what I'm doing, right? I'm affirming the proposition of theism to be true. Would you agree?
Yes.
So what is that? How is that different than just saying God exists? I'm affirming that as well by the same thing, whether I have belief in there or not.
Because the belief that God exists can be either true or false, but God existing
is either true or false.
If the statement God exists can only be true.
The statement God exists can be false. God could not exist. It could be the case that God does not exist, right? God exists or God does not exist. Those are law of excluded middle, right? It's one or the other. God does exist or God does not exist. Oh, so I haven't been paying to my live chat. Sorry, guys. Well, I've been really thinking about this stuff, so I got wrapped up.
I think if I was in a similar position,
I'll read yours in a second. Go ahead.
Not to downplay religion or anything, but if I was in a similar position where somebody was running around in their underwear in the house and nobody else was noticing them, I wouldn't say, hey, there's a naked man running around the house. I wouldn't even assume that would be the case. Even though it would be real to me, I would still I think I could differentiate it for myself that if I thought that God existed, He might not exist for everybody. I don't know.
No, that wouldn't make much sense. If God exists, he's gonna exist for everybody. But he's not an individual God. I don't think. But Raleigh says, "I'm with you." Jigsaw says, "Working on negations. Negation of God exists is God doesn't exist, but the negation of I believe God exists is I don't believe God exists." Different statements, yes. And this is what I said. I believe God exists is different propositionally than God exists, right? Because the negation of God exists is God does not exist. But the negation of I believe God does not exist is I do not believe God exists. So that's a different proposition. But my point is that I don't see a difference between the claim, right, or the supporting of the propositional content, right? Because God exists, the propositional content of God exists is ontologically God exists, right? That's the propositional content of when I say I believe God exists, the propositional content doesn't change. It is I'm affirming that proposition. So if I'm affirming that proposition, or I say I have an epistemic disposition of belief, or I just say it is true that God exists, or I just say God exists, these all seem to be affirming the same claim to me. Think about that.
Would it be true in the like opposite way? Like if you said that gods don't exist, or I believe gods don't exist, would it still be the same?
Well, okay, so if you say gods do not exist, right? You're making a factual statement. You're saying that it is the case that gods don't exist. It is true that gods don't exist. And if you say, I believe that gods do not exist, you're just affirming that proposition. You're just affirming the same propositional content. You're saying it is the case, that you think it is the case, that it is true that gods do not exist. I don't see much of a difference.
Right, because of the formulation. But if you say, I believe in God, is it the same? Because then somebody who said, I don't believe in God, would he be denying it? Or
okay, one more time. If you don't, okay.
I think what you say is true because of the way it's formulated.
Yeah.
But if you just say like a different formulation, you just say I believe in God. Is it factual? Just like somebody who say I don't believe in God, would that be affirming a reality about it?
Well, they're affirming, right? But whether they're factual or not, who knows, right? This is why I'm agnostic. I don't have a position on either way, right?
So if you say I don't believe in God, you're affirming that he doesn't exist?
No, if you don't believe,
I don't think so.
No,
right.
no, not logically.
Right.
Now,
Okay,
now in speech act theory, there's something called negation raising, where that might be the case. In negation, but we're not talking about speech act. We're talking about logic, right? But in ways of looking at things on what I would think would be what's called a perlocutionary act. If I say, "Hey, I don't believe in God," the receiver is going to go, "Hey, that person believes gods don't exist," right? Or if I say, "Hey, Zelot," I keep pronouncing your name wrong. Zelot, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, Zelot. So if I say, "Hey, Zelot, are you going to the party tonight?" And you say, "You know what? Yeah, Steve, I just don't think I'm going to the party tonight." I'm going to read into that perlocutionary that you are not going to the party, even though you didn't say you're not going to the party. You just said you don't think you're going to go. We interpret things, right? That may not have been your illocutionary force that you had. Your illocutionary intent may have been, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I may or may not go," right? Which would be the same thing, right? You know what? I don't think I'm going tonight means you may not go, but you still might. But if you say I'm not going, you're definitely saying that you're not going. Of course, you theoretically still could, obviously, but there's a difference between saying, "Hey, Steve, I'm not going," as opposed to, I think I'm not going, as opposed to I don't think that I'm not going. There's a big difference there.
No, yeah, I agree. I just wanted to point out the idea, and not sure if it's really relevant.
Yeah, logically though, you're right. One does not entail the other. Saying that I believe in God does entail that you don't believe in the negation, right? But if I say that I believe gods don't exist, that entails you don't believe.
Right. Yeah, it's the formulation more than the word belief. Let's say it like that.
Yeah, but the converse doesn't hold, right? You agree with that, right? If I say I believe God does not exist, entails. So if I believe God does not exist, does entail I don't believe in gods, but the converse, I don't believe in gods, does not entail I believe that gods are false. That's something that I've always tried to get across. Right. All right. So moving on here a little bit. It is getting late. It's much longer than I wanted to go, and I don't want to talk very loud because I don't want my roommates to get pissed. Let me go check my email, make sure that he's not mad. Okay. So this guy goes on and he says, atheism is a term devised by religious to label people who don't share their views. Really? No, actually, atheism was a term devised by people that were actually talking about Christians who didn't believe in the state-sanctioned Roman pantheonic gods. So I don't understand this at all. It is the opinion that theism is untrue, since there are no good reasons to believe that God exists. Who has that opinion besides Tjump? And by the way, if you say theism is untrue, you're basically saying there are no gods, are you not? If untrue equals false, right? Untrue equals false, right? I mean, now there is in one case I saw somebody try to use the difference between false and untrue, but logically I don't think there's a difference.
See, where I get tripped up, I don't know. I don't want to get off track again, but maybe real quick. Where I get tripped up is in the whole idea of belief. I think I might be using that word incorrectly,
Okay.
and I don't know if there's a better word to use.
How do you
where
use
if I'm
it?
trying to, I use it like almost as like a differentiator between what like my perception and the end reality. Like it's how I transfer information without putting one on top of the other.
Yeah, see, I don't. When I've been using the word belief, that just means you hold a proposition to be true or false. That's it. I believe.
So is there a
I
word
believe
I should use?
Something that's more individualized to you.
Well, I mean, just something that you can, where you're separating your personal like point of view versus reality. Is there any like separator for that, like in a word?
Not that I can really think of.
Is the debate going to be about Tjump when he says that there's no good reason to believe in God, or is it going to be about the definition of atheism?
I don't. Nobody should be debating the definition of atheism. There's 1,000 different definitions of atheism.
Oh, I thought that.
Yeah, no, we're talking about. We're going to be talking about some of his epistemology. This falls into his epistemology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anybody who's ever said Steve debates definitions is just wrong. I even wrote a blog on this saying stop saying this. It's not my position. I've never debated definitions. I think that's stupid. There's 1,000 different definitions. They're just descriptions. I wanted to debate the topics, right? I wanted to debate what they lead to if you use certain types of usages, right? That's what I want to discuss. But atheists won't do that with me because that's when they get into problems. Let's see here. But if it is the opinion that theism is untrue, that's the same thing as saying it is the opinion theism is false, since there are no good reasons to believe in God. That's a statement saying there are no gods. That is a statement of a claim that gods do not exist. Do you guys see it? Listen to that again. If it is the opinion that theism is untrue, since there are no good reasons to believe God exists. Well, if there's no good reasons to believe God exists, and you hold that theism is untrue, which means false in this particular case, logically, untrue is false, then if theism is false, what does that mean? It means there are no gods.
I guess. If theism is a belief in gods, so it can't be true if you don't have a good reason. I think that's what it's saying, right?
Well, no, theism could be true, and there could or not, may be or may not any good reason. Who the hell knows? Theism deals with the ontology of God, right? God existing or not. Right? So when people say theism is true, they're not saying that the belief of God is true or not. That's not what is meant. That's not the context of it. The context of saying theism is true is saying that the theism here is referring to the proposition, not to the belief. Even though theism is the belief that God does not exist, this type of statement is referring to the propositional value. So if I say theism is false, it is saying that the proposition God exists is false, that there are no gods, right?
I'm following you now.
Okay. It's not saying the belief is false, because there are obviously people out there that hold that belief. And so I think this is what Tjump's getting. This is what I found, that I think Tjump's getting this whole atheism is the no good reason to believe in God. But that's, again, they were using it as justification, not as a stipulative definition for atheism. So if you put in there, though, if Craig responds to Hitchens' speech by saying there's no positive arguments to show that atheism is true, and you put in Tjump's stipulative usage, then the statement becomes, Craig responds to Hitchens' speech by saying that he has no positive arguments to show that there are no good reasons to believe that God exists, which is completely different from Craig's seemingly intended meaning, saying Hitchens has no positive evidence to show that God does not exist. That is very confusing to me when Tjump is changing what Craig is trying to say merely by saying, well, you know what, Craig and Hitchens and all these other people using atheism as there's just no good reason to believe in God. Well, that's not how Craig's using it. And that changes the entire meaning, because there's a difference between saying the proposition there are no good reasons to believe in God as opposed to ontologically God exists or not. So, yeah, this is bizarre. All right.
Do you think?
One quick. Harlequin, thanks, bye, buddy. Go do your biology. This is taking place March 17th at I think 1 o'clock or something. Noon. I think noon, maybe 1, something like those lines. What?
Do you think that he maybe tried to create a maze of a statement so it would be impossible to argue against?
It's hard to say. I think I don't know. I mean, this is a guy that actually thinks that rocks have moral agency, right? That if a rock hits you in the head, it was an imposition of will. Therefore, the moral thing to say would be the rock committed an immoral act, which I just it hurts my head.
Yeah,
I got a headache from just hearing that.
No, that's his position. You've heard him say it. I'm not exaggerating here. This is his position, that that the definition of a moral impermissible act is something that is any kind of imposition of will against your will, right? So if you have something that is a moral imposition of will, that even if a rock does it, who's not even a moral agent of moral consideration, right? Even if a rock did it, the rock was immoral. What? No. When we're talking about moral context, we're talking about what we want to do given a certain situation of morally ethical concerns, right? We want to do the right thing. A rock does no moral considerations. It doesn't know what is right or wrong. It doesn't care. It's not violating your will. It's doing what it's doing. It's falling under gravity. Blame gravity, not the rock.
But by that, then a police person arresting you isn't going against.
Yeah. I think somebody brought something similar to that as well. If somebody punches you, is that a moral act? Yeah, because they're going against your will. So if somebody was like arresting you, would that be an immoral act? Well, and I think he argued, I don't think that was exactly what it was, but something similar. And he's just like, well, it would be an immoral act from their perspective, right? Because, they're violating your will. Therefore, it's an immoral act with relationship to the person who's being violated. But that's not how we think about ethics. It is a moral act to arrest somebody who committed a heinous crime, right? That's something we want.
What about people who play sports?
Oh, now you just blew up everything. Why'd you have to do that? Well, no, I think Tjump would argue, well, you're playing sports, therefore it isn't an imposition of will because you're playing the sport, which means that you expect people to hit you. But I don't want them to hit me. I don't know if you're
boxing, you'd want to get hit as little as possible. You definitely aren't I can't wait to get hit.
That's true. So is it immoral for a boxer to hit another boxer? I don't know. You wrap your head around this stuff, man. It sucks. But I also want to ask him questions like, of course, what is the good? What is good as subjective? And also, does he think somebody could? Okay, this is the good time for somebody to pretend to be Tjump. Could it, in some possible world, could they exist a good reason to believe in God? In some possible world.
He would have to say yes.
You think so?
And I think he would have to.
By the way, I don't know. I'm not trying to say this one way or another. You think he would say yes? That in some possible world, there could be in some possible world there exists a good reason to believe in God.
How can you honestly say no to that? Just out of curiosity, what would be an honest reason to say no? Just out of curiosity.
Well, let's look at it both ways. Okay, and then we'll kind of maybe end it from there because this is going to be too long. If he says yes, he would have to acknowledge that means there's at least one possible world where there exists a good reason to believe in God, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. But he would argue that this possible world, this actualized possible world, is not the one that it's in. It is some other possible. It could be the next possible world next to us. It could be whatever, it doesn't matter. Just in some possible world, but he's arguing that in this possible world there are no good reasons. So the question, it kind of raises the question: well, what makes this actualized world such that there are no good reasons, as opposed to why there are no good reasons, why there is a good reason in some other world? Why? If we were in that other possible world, which would then become actualized because it's indexical, then we would have a good reason to believe in God. So there is a good reason to believe in God. It's just not. He would have to argue then it's just not in this actualized world. So that makes the statement. He would have to argue then there's no good reasons to believe in God in any in the actualized world, but in other possible worlds there could be, which gets really bloated pretty quick, don't you think?
I mean, if you wanted to be honest, but I'm not sure if that's his intention.
Zebulon says he says, Steve, you're straw man me. You know, I get that, Zebulon. No, he would say that, right? I get that, right? I we already said at the very beginning. I already put aside all the possible responses that he'll say, Zebulon. They're like, you got your head up your ass, you don't understand, you're confusing epistemology and ontology. You got all those. I have 32 of them. I think I wrote down somewhere. So that's already covered.
Yes.
What?
Steve, you don't know philosophy.
Yeah, that's fine. Look, I'm not an expert, right? I'm a lay person, right? I'm not even a pseudo expert. I am a pure lay person on these topics. I am somebody that has looked at these topics over a period of time on my own accord because I had interest in it over a period of 7 years or something like that, or 6, 7 years, whatever the hell it's been. I am not an intellectual. I'm not even a pseudo intellectual. I'm just somebody who likes this particular topic, and I like to talk to people about it, and people listen because I generally like to get things right, and I do talk to people that know what they're doing. And when I make mistakes in these things, somebody will listen to this later and go, "Yeah, Steve, you screwed the pooch here on Fitch's paradox and this and this and this, and I'll fix it," right? So I'm fine with that. But I do read more about these topics than the average layperson, I guess. But if he says, you don't know anything about philosophy, well, then what am I reading about? I mean, at least I have some basic understanding. I think. In fact, it was weird because when I went to the Atheist Christian Book Club, somebody had said in one of the comments, I think it was on Atheist Edge, going, I've listened to this, and Steve's just talking nonsense, no philosopher, would agree with any of this stuff, blah, blah. And then I had a friend of mine who's Stephen Hoyt, who's a professional epistemologist, say, wait a minute, I was there, and I didn't see anything that Steve said that was wrong in accordance to the understanding that's current, the paradigm in philosophy. Now, Steve disagrees with the paradigm, and, he'll argue more in-depth stuff. But he's like, what are you disagreeing with as far as, like, normality of philosophy? Because I didn't hear him say anything that I would say, oh, that's not true, in philosophy, generally speaking, right? And so I don't know what they mean by I don't know philosophy when I heard people say that. Well, I'm not an expert, no, but I have a base understanding, I think. Don't I? Maybe?
Yeah, I was just being facetious.
No. I get that, but I actually hear that though, man, and it's weird.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I would use you as a source.
At least on the atheist topic, this is one subject I think I know, quite a bit about. I mean, again, I could be wrong. Who cares? I don't know. But like I said, I don't get many people challenge me on this stuff. I'm out there and I'm saying, look, I want somebody to come in. I want somebody to challenge my arguments. I had a guy from, I had a guy yesterday and today. I remember him from G+. His name was Tom, what was his last name? Tom something or other. And doesn't matter. But I remember the icon that he had. I remember him from G+. And even back then, he didn't know any of this stuff. He didn't know logic. He didn't know philosophy. He just would be one of those base level atheists, right? And he said in there, Steve doesn't talk to anybody that can debunk him. And I've debunked him many times and blah, blah. I'm like, oh, really, Tom? I remember you. You have never debunked me on any of this stuff. You've never shown any of my arguments to be wrong. I guarantee it. Matter of fact, I tell you what, you show us right now that one of my arguments is wrong. Like pick one, like the atheists have burden of proof, or the weak theism equals agnosticism equals weak theism, anything like that. Show the flaw in it, right? Show that it's wrong, and I put it on my blog and say, look, Tom pointed out an error to me, which could happen. I had an error in one of my logs the other day. Somebody pointed out. I looked at it and said, they're right. It was a logical error. I fixed it, right? But if he could do this, I said I put it on my blog, and I said, you know what's going to happen though? You're not going to take me up on this challenge. You're never going to show any type of proof whatsoever. You're not going to show I made any kind of mistake. You're going to run and hide. And you know, he responded. He's like, well, I just want to waste my time showing you again because. And I'm like, really? You did exactly what I said you're going to do because this is what you used to do on G+. You know, they don't want to come have these discussions, and I don't understand why. If they think they can debunk this stuff, why don't they want to talk to me about it? I went on Monitor Debate, right? I mean, I talked to the Duke on the atheist thing. He was clueless. So I don't understand why I can't get some of these higher level atheists like Jacqueline Glenn to come talk to me about it, right? Because I think she's made some significant mistakes. I get why Matt and Arndt don't, but I think they're kind of silly on it. But they have nothing to gain by it. But I'm out there, right? I'm like, hey, come talk to me. Come explain to me why I'm wrong. I mean, if it doesn't matter who you are. You could look. Let me ask you this. Let's say you're one of my biggest detractors, something that I actually like loathe and loathes me, right? There's a few of them out there, right, Mr. Serious? Hard.
Maybe like one.
We'll go with one. Yeah, everybody loves Steve, but let's say it was you, Mr. Serious. Let's say you hated my immortal soul. Because I'm a rat bastard, and we're locked in a perpetuity argument for eternity that we hate each other. Now you could debunk me, right? But you know Zealot over here, and you say, hey Zealot, Steve already blocked me. I don't like him, and he hates me. But here's my argument. Go give him this argument, right? And he can run that argument. Arguments are arguments. I don't give a shit where they're from. They've never even done that.
I wonder if you're afraid of like people just completely locking you out and like forcing you into sort of like a echo chamber.
Well, a lot of them done that. What they try to do is character assassinate me, right? That's the big thing. They want to character assassinate me to put me in an echo chamber. That's not going to happen. I mean, I'm now going to be starting a new show with Dr. Fuzz Ronner with Reasons to Believe. That's going to be live twice a month. I got other things in the works. I'm just taking a little reprieve, I guess. I'm in a lull. There are reasons why I'm in a lull, but I'm in a lull, and I admit that. Somebody just said that Matt Dillahunt wanted Tjump to be on the Atheist Experience. Oh God. Yeah, well, like I said, Dillahunt, I have a lot of respect for Dillahunt for all the stuff he's done, but he is an ideologue. He is a dogmatic ideologue, and he will not accept that he's wrong, right? He will never. When it comes to like me, he won't correct himself. Even though I have the evidence, I have the logic, and I have the citations, it doesn't matter. He's dogmatic, and whatever, right? But if somebody thinks that Matt Dillahunt, is right, then why don't they say, well, okay, Steve, here's the argument, here's the citations, here's the logic. No, I don't get that. You know what I get, Mr. Serious? I get, here's a dictionary.
Yeah, so doesn't matter though. Just like the guy you were talking to on that blog, it doesn't matter how you want to define the words. We're trying to like that doesn't change the argument at all. It's like obfuscating the argument.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. That's happened on one of it happened on one of my pages too. Somebody was just changing the words I used to mean different things. I'm like, well, then you're not really addressing my argument, right? So
if he wants to know how you're defining it, maybe he could ask.
Well,
but
yeah,
he can't just over define it for you.
Well, I have two main things. One, I do assert that it is mostly used. Atheism is mostly used in philosophy, right? Generally speaking, and again, lack belief is used as well. But I mean, if you look normatively, overwhelmingly, if you read any of the papers, it is. If you see the word atheist, it is understood more often to be the positive case. I think this is well established by now. Even though it took many years to get there, this is well established. And any atheist who's against that, they have a hell of a burden to show otherwise. And they never have. And I don't believe they can. But they could try. But that's one thing I assert. But the other thing I assert is if you can accept other usages like this one, like T-jumps, let's see what happens when you pick it, when you use that particular usage. Because now, oh my God, now we're talking about, something completely different than God existing. We're talking about is just good reasons or not if God exists. But anyways, let's get back on track here. So you would agree though, if he says yes, that there's a good reason to exist in at least one possible world that is possible, that he would need to show me why it's not this actualized world, I think. But let's say that he does say no. right? And I'm going to leave this to you real quick. Let's see if you can figure this out. If Tjump says there are no good reasons to believe in God in any possible world, what's the implication of that?
That he knows all the possibilities out there, I guess.
No, not necessarily. No, that's not what it implies. What implies, what does it mean when you say that it cannot exist in any possible world? Like, for example,
That is impossible.
that's impossible, right? Exactly. A four-sided triangle cannot exist in any possible world because it's impossible. By definition, impossible means cannot exist in any possible world. So if he admits, Mr. Sirius, that there are no possible worlds where there's a good reason to believe in God, he is saying that it's impossible to have a good reason to believe in God. Think about the logic there. I mean, am I wrong here, guys? I mean, help me out here. Again, I'm spitballing this, man. This is me brainstorming. This is how I prepare for shit usually on my own, but I'm letting you guys look at my thinking process here, you know? Because we know Tjump doesn't prepare for shit.
Doesn't God have to exist in all possible worlds or not exist at all?
Yeah, I would say so too.
Well, that's Plantinga's modal ontological argument. I don't necessarily agree with his ontological argument. I think he begs the question. I think his first premise and the conclusion can actually be interchanged. I think they mean basically the same thing, and the premises that are kind of in the middle, they don't really tell you anything. They're informative, but they don't really tell you anything. So I don't know if it necessarily is the case. I mean, that'd only be if you assume the maximally great properties, but even then, there's some disagreement there. But I'm not convinced that a God cannot exist in a single possible world and have to be in all of them. Even with the great making properties.
Tjump's argument isn't even about the existence of a God. It's just about reasons to believe in that God.
Correct.
So, let's say God believes it exists in all worlds, but in a different world, God daily wipes his boogers on the earth. Then in that world, there would be a really good reason to believe in God, where in this one it would still be, no reason or something.
Right. Whatever the reason is kind of irrelevant. But I like the way you said that, though. Notice how has changed the entire domain of discourse, and I pointed this out before with Tjump, but he changes the entire domain of discourse from the ontology of God, the great debate question, God exists or not, right? That's been the great debate question. He changes it from that, right? He moves away from that domain of ontology, and he wants to put it more into epistemology or justifications. Are there good reasons to believe in God? He wants to change the entire domain of discourse from ontology to epistemology. Why? Why would you do that?
Easier to win.
Why would you do this, Tjump? Why?
So he can establish his position of not believing because they're
I don't know. But let me ask you guys real quick, and again, leave the comments in the video description. Again, feel free to dissect this. This video was very impromptu. I'm really caffeinated. I'm winding down before I go to bed, and I wanted to brainstorm a little bit. I haven't been on air for a day or so, and I want to do these twice a week on this channel at least, and so from the Discord. But does it make sense if somebody says, if I said Tjump, or in this case, Mr. Sirius, not to try to compare you guys, but if I said, Mr. Sirius, you're saying there are no good reasons to believe in God in any possible world, which means that it is impossible to have any possible God. It is impossible. So it is impossible to have any good reason to have God exist. Therefore, everybody should believe that God does not exist. But that's a hell of a claim to say it's impossible to have any good reason to believe in God, right? That's a completely different game. There's a difference in claims between saying there are no good reasons to believe in God, and it is impossible to have a good reason for believing in God. Those are vastly different claims, right? Think of his burden of proof on that one.
I wouldn't even I would backpedal shit ton. I'd have to. If you got him down that road, I don't think there's anywhere he could go.
I mean, like I said, poke holes in that. Think about that. I mean, I want people to poke holes in this. Like I said, the other day, somebody did point out a mistake that I made. I had said something along the lines of all squares have four sides, and the negation was all squares don't have four sides. But they pointed out that this is Aristotelian, but they pointed out that may not necessarily be the case. The negation would be, it is not the case that all squares have four sides. It would only take one square to show that all squares don't have four sides. So but it wouldn't have to be that all squares don't have 4 sides. It would be only one required. And so he pointed that out to me. And like I said, you know what I did? I go, I think you're right. And you know what I did? I changed the blog, right? And I thanked him for it. So you can correct me on things if you're right, but demonstrate it. Don't just assert it, because I'm so tired of people making assertions, and then you say, well, you don't have any evidence. Like this guy that's on this video the other day, Tom, whatever the hell his last name is. I was like, you're just making assertions. You say you've just debunked me. You've disproved my arguments. That's a claim. Show us. Oh, I'm not going to bother. Yeah, okay. Even I told him, you're going to run away. I said, you've never done it. You've never debunked anything. You don't know basic logic. But I think they lie. I think they outright lie. Anyways.
Yeah, honesty is a big thing.
Dude, I got to tell you, ever since I've been on the internet, I've learned so much about people. I've always told people my life is an open book. I go back my entire life on Facebook, and I've known people I've known for my entire life that I still talk to. And it wasn't until I got onto recently, I'd say in the last couple of years, that I've seen the depths of humanity, how duplicitous people can be, how vile, how trollish, how scummy, what people will do for donos, what people will do for clout, what people will do to have their ego stroked. I would have not been prepared for this 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago.
Well, I mean,
it was eye-opener. Go ahead. Sorry.
At the same time, you've been introduced to the opposite side of that coin, I'm sure.
Oh, I met the best people in the world. Absolutely. It balances out. Look, I mean, people like Bullinator and Cheshire and Res Rhetoric and Nick Suter, and I would even include Nikki, Serrated Kiss, Maggie Famine I really like a lot. And of course, Sweet Heathen, I would pretty much give a kidney to any one of them, right? I mean, I'd take a bullet for Sweet. Not in the head, though. No, let's not get crazy. But, I'd take a bullet in the leg for her, But, I love these people, right? I mean, they have proven themselves to be honorable, decent people. And on the flip side, I've seen people that are not honorable. People that are just pieces of shit. I ranted to them people today on Twitter, a matter of fact, where I was just mortified at what I had heard that I didn't know about. I was told. And I had no idea about it. Somebody actually told me about some rumor that was going around that could have been easily alleviated had somebody just asked me. Somebody just asked me about the rumor. I would have explained it. But it wasn't until somebody did ask me about it. I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I didn't know what, I think my mic's cutting out. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? But we figured it out. And it was kind of sad because people were filling in narrative with information based upon incomplete data because they didn't know the whole story. And so they just made shit up. But now it's shown that every one of those people that made shit up was wrong because the facts are out there because somebody finally asked me about it. And I was able to give them the truth. And it was verifiable, right? So, oh well. That's my rant for the evening.
Would you say that you've gotten a good representation of the world maybe just through the internet?
Yeah, I think it's a good slice. Yeah, I really do. And then you want to know the funniest part? I swear to God, I'm not going to call this person out because again, I'm not going to promote my detractors, especially people that I find to be garbage humans. But there was a person who was actually on a fake account. I know it was a fake account. I know it was them. No question about it. I have reasons, but believe it or not, I don't give a fuck whether you believe it or not. I just don't. But I do. But I know that it was them, and they were sea-laying me, right? And they're basically just asking me questions, and I was answering them correctly, and find out that a couple of people that she thought or treats as friends came into the conversation and basically backed up everything I said. Not even basically, did everything I said. And did this person give me an apology? Even I asked for an apology numerous times. I was like, you owe me an apology. You made a false accusation. I'm telling you it's false. I can show it's false. Other people have told you it's false. And yet you're not apologizing to me. Then to come to find out that it's just, a person that, is one of my haters who's never going to say I'm right about anything, right? And of course I blocked him because I blocked her. I blocked her because I had her blocked before. But this is what they do. I'm not going to waste my time on a fake account on Twitter to try to mess with people. I have no who has time for that. There's a reason I block them is because they're trolls that do that. That's one of the things I think a troll does is waste people's time by sea-laying. You know, I ask questions to get to the truth. That's what philosophy is about. You know, that's the whole Socratic method. Trolls ask questions just to waste people's time to make for themselves to feel better. I don't know. But sorry, that's my rant for the end of this video. Love you guys. Guess what we're doing tomorrow, though?
Cooking show?
Ha! That'd be cool. No, I'm actually doing a video with Sweet Heathen. Sweet Heathen and I are going live tomorrow. And it's going to be at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. And her and I are going to read, yes, get this, we're going to read mean Christian comments to me that she has not seen before. Yes.
Ooh.
So I instead of spending quality time with her, having wine off air, not dealing with any of this stuff, just, you know, because we talk about other things. No, her and I are going to go on air and we're going to read mean Christian comments about me. What can go wrong?
Steve's going to drag her into the muck.
She doesn't know what she's in for. I've already read these comments. She hasn't. But again, Christians, right? Self-professed Christians. Atheists we expected from because they have no moral. No, I'm kidding. But no, but it is funny that I do see, the theists have been kind of standing up for me more than the atheists have. And I think that's kind of funny. A lot of people that just because they don't understand these arguments just try to demean me and try to argue against me by character assassination. Theists, I don't necessarily do that as much. I think it's actually toned down quite a bit, with few exceptions. Obviously, if you're a young Christianist, all bets are off because they're just dishonest. But yeah, that's gonna be fun tomorrow because I wanted to make sure we don't promote the video that's from, but I was like, these are gold. I've got to have these, you know. For example, I'll give you. I'm not going to read them off because I'm not going to go in there right now. But Mr. Serious, did you happen to know that I'm actually a gay sodomite? Did you know that?
I mean, I guessed.
Yeah, news to me. Why wouldn't somebody told me this? Shouldn't I not be aware of this?
You should have asked me.
God damn it! You know, next time I want to know about my sexual preference, and what I like, you know, I'll ask you. You know, because obviously this Christian he clearly knows my sexual preference. You know, and then obviously I hate God. You know, which I don't believe in, but that's confusing.
I mean, always take random Christians to stare through your window.
I'm telling you, these people that are self-professed Christians are some of the evilest people I've ever seen in my life. And you know me, I dog on atheists quite frequently. Don't get me wrong, but I think that I dog on atheists because I honestly do want them to become better. I honestly do want them to become better at these discussions. When a theist is being a complete shitbag, I'll dog on them just as much. And I think they could be, well, I would have said a long time ago that theists are always going to be worse than atheists, but last 3 years have demonstrated to me that they're about the same. They both can have some very shitty people.
Maybe we can raise all the boats together.
I think that theists and atheists can both have really shitty arguments.
Yeah, but that's not it. I'm talking about being shitty people as a whole, right? I mean, somebody who says that, you know, I hate God and I'm a sodomite and all this other stuff, you're just a shitty person, right? But it's not that it's different than an atheist saying, well, you know, Steve, I'm trying to think of something that they say about me. Steve, about my arguments.
Steve's an RA.
Well, that's not about my arguments, though, right? That's still pretty shitty, obviously. There's no question about it. I was thinking more along the lines about my Steve's arguments are fallacious, even though they can't demonstrate it. But you're right. Steve's an RA. Same thing. That's all just character assassination, right? And what's funny is it's backfired, I think, because a lot more people now are realizing that they were just trying to assassinate my character rather than have anything to do with the topic. But that's fine. It's actually done well for me because it showed me who my friends were, and it showed to be who the honest people were, and the people who just wanted to believe narrative, which is fine. Do your thing, you know. I've lost friends, but I've also gained a few, so I guess it balances out, right? In the long run,
I would hope so.
Because I'm fiercely loyal to my friends, They have been to me, so I'm going to return that in kind. And anybody who knows me, I mean, look at Reds. I've stood by him for 7 years. He stood by me. I've one of the reasons why I'm actually in a lull is because I'm standing by my friends, because my friends were targeted, and my friends were harassed, and my friends had death threats. And even though I can deal with it, I don't give a fuck. My friends are my friends, and I've changed my things quite a lot because of what was happening to my friends, because of these shitty people. And they were atheists, by the way, after them. So, what does that tell you? But yeah, I'm fiercely loyal. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to call out somebody in private if I'm my friend, right? If I really think that Reds did something wrong, I'm going to talk to them about it. That's what they do to me. Reds, Chesh, Nick, doesn't matter. All of them will say, hey, Steve, can we talk to you about this? And we do, but we do it in private. And then if I agree with them, I change my position. If not, I'm like, well, I don't really necessarily agree with you. But you know what? We still love each other. We haven't stopped being friends if we disagree with each other. But no, there's some people around that if you disagree with them, God forbid, you're now Satan. You're the worst person on the planet if you disagree with them. And they harass you for 3 years, which is okay to me, but they harass my friends. That's the difference. So, yeah. But anyways, guys, thank you very much. I'm sorry this got to went dark toward the end, didn't it? What was it supposed to be?
So depressing.
Right?
Now everybody needs to like the video and subscribe if you haven't, and check out Steve's Patreon if you also haven't. He's going to LA soon. He wants to bring his daughter. She wants nice things. She wants good ice cream, okay?
I do hope she can go. She has a dental appointment, and I think it's on the 17th, though, they have to go, but they hope there's a cancellation. They might put her in the 16th, in which case she can go with me. So right now, I don't know if my daughter can go with me or not. She wants to, and if she does go with me, I'll stay the night, because it's just it's a long journey. But yeah, I do want to take my daughter. Nobody else wants to go with me, do they?
I'll go.
You go? You live in LA? Near LA?
Not even close.
Oh. Well, I'm trying to save money. My taxes are to do like everybody else's, and I owe on that, and I got to spend money to fly to Boston. I got to go to LA, and so yeah, you know what? Yeah, my Patreon, because I could use it. I'm not kidding. My Patreon has gone down, recently, and I expected it to. I wasn't going to think it was going to be as high as it was after the Non Sequitur show broke up. I get that. It's gone down a little bit. But I do appreciate my Patreons a lot. And we will pick things up. We will have more stuff coming out. I'm doing new shows type stuff I've got ideas for. It's just we're playing a waiting game right now, and it just sucks. So, all right. Well, thanks, Mr. Sirius, Virian, Zelot, Lurker. I appreciate it, guys. Hey, Lurker, you ever get a mic? Lurker?
If he did, it's muted.
Yeah, well, like I said, I really don't mind who comes in, as long, because he seemed to be pretty cool, by the way. But I mean, nobody's going to secretly record this because it's live, so I don't really care if somebody has we're off air or something, and secretly records it. It's different than we're live. But Zebulon, Miko, Iron Charioteer. Yeah. I'm going to call it a night, and thanks.